Life is full of choices, so let's explore the best ways to thrive. This is a Connecting You podcast, hosted by me, Mayra Richards, and my marketing director, Emily Robinson. Tune in to discover a healed, healthy, and purposeful life.
This is season 5 of the Connecting You podcast. We're going to keep uncovering the hard truths in life. We have now talked about grief and addiction. If either of those is interesting to you, go back and have a listen. Otherwise, we are going to be talking about divorce, which hopefully neither of us has to go through, but we have both been impacted through our parents. This is a topic that we know deeply about, and yet we've never been through it, which is an interesting feeling. You as a therapist see couples struggling a lot as well.
Yes. One of the problems is that people do already have in their mind that divorce is an option.
Okay, and they don't want to work through it.
Yes.
Is that common in like marriage therapy? One of them has already checked out?
Often. Not that they can't go back into a thriving marriage, but that tends to happen often, where one person's willing to fight, the other one isn't.
Parents were in the middle of a divorce, and it was interesting for me because the words that sort of floated around was that the child will feel guilty, or the child will want their parents to stay together. At least in movies. That's where I was getting this. I had never felt that. I never felt that I want my parents to be together. I wanted them to be apart, so they would stop being so upset all the time. I'm wondering how people get to that point of just, because you're living together all the time, but having such little like empathy, compassion, love, care for each other. It's a really volatile thing. A lot of times it is not amicable.
I was actually thinking about this today. I have hope for all marriages, I really do, but I actually have more hope for marriages that have gone through an affair or an addiction or something like that, because the repair takes time and it's long, but it can happen, as opposed to 20, 30 years of built-in bitterness in a marriage. When couples come in with that, I get a little bit more, like this is going to be way harder, because they have years of context that you can never break, as opposed to the breaking of the covenant of, I'm not saying go have an affair, but
It's cut and dry.
it's cut and dry.
So there's a problem to attack.
As opposed to all the gray and nuances that came within a marriage that now they're finally willing to uncover. That's years of counseling.
I've seen a fair share of divorces throughout family and friends, and that word bitterness, I think, is the most relatable one. I don't think I've seen, of course it does happen, but I haven't seen a divorce that is from one action, like you were saying. There was an affair or there was a gambling problem. It's that day in and day out of not even growing apart, but becoming hardened to the other person.
Yeah, carrying a lot of offense. I think that's easy to carry. Like, your husband doesn't take the trash out. I'm offended, but I'm not going to say anything.
Yeah.
And then
Each time
it just keeps building it. What is at first is annoying and you don't say anything, then becomes offense and you don't say anything, then becomes unforgivable and you don't say anything, and then it's bitterness.
It's like what we were saying with why anger can be a part of grief, is because sadness left unchecked transforms or mutates inside of you into something else that is a lot harder to repair than the initial sadness of not being seen or heard. These little things, if you don't say anything in your mind, you get to ascribe all of these different powers to it. So he didn't take out the trash. That's a silly example, but each time that he doesn't take out the trash, and then you think it's because he doesn't want to, and then it's because he doesn't love you, and then it's because he doesn't want you to be happy.
And then because he doesn't care.
Yeah. So it just spirals out of control. Why don't people say something to begin with?
Oh, a lot of it has to do with you weren't raised in a family where speaking up was a thing. You're afraid to be a burden. You think that conflict equals a bad marriage, which it doesn't. It's actually really healthy. There's so many things of why you don't speak up. A trust. Maybe they do lash out if you say something.
Yeah, it'd be unsafe.
It could be an unsafe environment. There's just a number of things of why people don't speak up. But ultimately, I do think, and I've said this before and I'll say it again, I do think that it's the things unsaid in a marriage that actually lead to divorce.
I I was listening to a different podcast, and it wasn't talking about divorce, but it was talking about things left unsaid. When you are angry, something he said hit me, which was, you have to care that you're angry.
Yes.
Just observing your anger isn't enough. You have to care in the sense of, I need this to change, or I need to understand it so that I'm not angry the next time, or I need to say something. That was something that hit me, because anger, at least with myself, I can let it just sit there. But if you care about it, then you're going to want to do something about it.
Yes. Whether that is for yourself or for the other person or for the marriage itself, I think you need to care enough to set the effort of, hey, I'm not liking how this is going. This is either being disrespectful, or this is just not the marriage that I want in the nicest way possible. This is just not what I wanted. Can we together create a marriage that we actually would be proud of telling people about?
Part of why people don't do that is marriage is so uplifted in our society as a goal that when that goal falls apart with divorce, then it's a failure on yourself, or you feel that you have failed to keep it all together. That keeps particularly a lot of women who either don't want to be alone or who don't want to be seen as, oh, I have to start over.
Yeah. Marriage is not success or failure. That is not how you should be seeing it. Just because you get married doesn't mean that you're successful, or that you're healthy, or that you're nice.
You just got married.
It just means you got married. Oh. That is it. And I do think that society has made marriage into, oh, if you are pretty and smart and whatever, that means that you are successful because now you got a guy, or because now you got a girl, or whatever. That is not true. I think that we need to start seeing marriage as what it is, which is a covenant under God that is supposed to make you humble before God. That's who created it. Therefore, it is all about Him and not about you and not about your spouse. Marriage is about this communion with your spouse to be able to sanctify each other in the best way possible. So whenever you do see Jesus face to face, you're able to say, hey, I did the best that I can on this earth, and look, this person made me feel really humble. I clothed myself in humility. And that is a big thing of what it is. Not all that it is, but I think that when the world has shifted it into divorce is a failure, marriage is a success, and it was never meant to be that. Divorce does hurt you. It is the breaking of a covenant. So of course it's going to be devastating. It is one of the most painful things. I read somewhere that it equals the pain of losing a child. That is painful. That is heartbreaking. And people go around making this decision, some of them because they do have biblical foundation of abuse, all that stuff. Like, I'm not saying stay in a marriage where you're being abused, but other times is I'm just not happy. That a lot. Like, I'm just not happy. And I'm like, you are ripping apart. Two became one and you're ripping that apart. That's going to hurt you.
I've seen a lot of people fight for their marriage, not in a positive sense, but in the sense of, in order to keep this marriage together, I will hide myself and I will not say anything and I will just continue on. I've also watched them get divorced later, and for very warranted reasons, for people who are going through a really difficult time because of their marriage. What can they think about?
I'm never going to tell a person to get a divorce, even if I think that they should. That is just none of my business. Unless there is like something big in the marriage, I do think that you can shift the marriage into a healthier, thriving version. I do want to say you have the marriage you want. You have the marriage you chose. And that is a hard truth that people have to live with. They chose their spouse. Whether he's a narcissist, whether he is angry, whether he's a liar, you chose that person. And it is one of the hardest sessions that I have with people to admit that you chose that person out of a hurt, a wound, an unhealed part of you, but you still chose this person. You know what I mean? And it's so painful and it's so sad to sit with them. And when they realize that, like, that is part of, when I say take responsibility, that is the responsibility that I want people to take. I'm not asking you to take responsibility for their anger or their abuse or whatever. Absolutely not. Like, those things are unacceptable. But you do have to take responsibility that a part of you chose this person, and a lot of times they had red flags to begin with.
What are the red flags for the people who are just dating to look for?
Cheating when you're just dating them, that's pretty big.
There's something sneakier.
I would say lying. If you find him telling a lie, if what he says and what his actions are not matching up, that is a red flag of lack of follow through. You don't want to date that person. It's not going to change in marriage. If they don't want kids, that's not a red flag. But a lot of women get married with guys who don't want kids, and then they're like, well, he didn't want a kid before, he's not going to want a kid now. You know what I mean? Then they're like, he's a terrible dad. I'm like, but he never wanted a child. I think that as women, we're willing to bypass a lot of things that they say, and we're like, they don't mean it.
They'll change
they
later.
will change. And the person that changes might be you. And maybe for negative ways and maybe for positive ways. But I sit with clients and I'm like, he never changed. He was actually pretty stable in his ability to tell you who he wanted to be. If he works all the time, you're not going to get married and he's going to stop working. It's not going to happen. So it might not be a red flag, but it is. If it's not something that you want now, it's not going to be something that you want later. It's actually going to get harder, especially if you have kids.
That's the difficulty of love, is that we just want things to be different so badly that we try to silence that voice, or we overlook things that we already know, things that we already feel. Once you're married, all of these things are going to get so much harder. That's the thing that you chose. And I think I asked this question several episodes back. I was like, the attitude or the behavior that he's doing now, that is not a big deal now, but if he does it for the next 60 years, let's say that he just keeps doing it every day, is that something that you are going to be on board with? You need to know now, what am I signing up for? What if it never goes away?
You really have to think through that. And that is something that people have gone to their wedding day knowing in that very moment. I've sit with clients and they're like, I knew I shouldn't have gotten married. And it's so devastating to be like, you wanted to please a crowd instead of following what your gut, your instinct, and even your wisdom was telling you. I think that's really hard. Because then you're like, they don't want to break the marriage, especially in Christian circles. That is, you not being happy is not one reason to get a divorce. The idea of love itself, people don't know what love means, and they think that it's love enough. I'm like, no. Love, wisdom, together with humility, yes, that will probably be enough. But love itself is an emotion.
Emotions change.
Emotions change
Every
with
day.
the wind.
Yeah,
they
every
come,
moment.
they go. The moment. So love, I don't know where that was like the only reason that you need to get married is because you love him or her. That's not real. That's not wise. There are practical things that come along with that.
I mean, there's wedding day stories I've heard of. The bride is ready, she's in her dress, and her family is like, forget about the wedding. Let's go right now.
Yes,
let's leave.
Yeah.
We don't care. Don't worry about it. Keep nothing in your mind. Just go with us right now. And they still get married. Once we get to that point of divorce, for whatever reasons we've had.
Sure.
What does healing look like? What steps are we going to take?
If you've gotten a divorce, the likelihood of you getting a second divorce is much higher and goes up. I do think it's because people go, it was the other person's fault, and they would have just changed, then we would have stayed married. And that's not true. You have to look into yourself and say, what part did I play? And I know that's really hard, but there's a part of it that whether you enabled the behavior from the beginning, whether you wanted a quick fix. We talked about your parents. They almost got a divorce. And I really do think one of the reasons was like your mom always wanted to be loved, and she found somebody who did for a little bit, and she thought, I'll just choose him. I have nobody else. You know what I mean? Might as well be him. And I'm like, you're trying to fix something very quickly that it's a deeper thing to heal. Focus on that. Focus on the thing that needs to be healed, not just put a Band-Aid on it that you did with your first marriage. With my sister, she's the oldest, she got married. She wanted to get out of the situation, and she went and she dated him. And so figuring out those inner parts of you that need to grow, they need to be better, so that when you show up to the next person, you don't have to show up with baggage. I don't believe in that. I think that you're never going to be whole, but I believe that you can heal some to the point of, hey, I'm going to bring a better version of myself to the next person than I did with my first one.
We've seen a couple stories within our family where the idea of getting married, from my opinion, was to change their current situation.
Yes.
And it was not to be happily married or to be committed to this person that they knew was going to be good for them and for their lives. I think people do judge. There's a stigma to divorce of like, why did you marry this person? Why did you put up with this? There's so much that people don't show compassion for in that journey. At some point, you do have to be allowed to walk it back. You do have to be able to take yourself out of that situation and say, going forward, it's going to be different.
Yeah, because it can be different. There is redemption, and redemption doesn't look like you go back and marry your old spouse. Redemption looks like you heal and you walk in a relationship that you're proud of, that you love. It can get better. I do think so, but it takes effort. Nothing in life is a quick fix. So many people get divorced within a year, they're married again. I'm like, that is crazy.
There's no way you healed from the first time.
No way. Like, you were with this person because you loved them so much. This thing broke apart. It is the breaking of a marriage, and therefore it does not make sense to just jump into the next relationship.
So for people who have been divorced, what is the hope? What is the healing for them to move on to the next stage?
I do think that the hope in it is that you can be a better version of yourself, for your community, for your kids, and hopefully, that's not the goal. I don't think that the goal is to get remarried, but if you want that, if you want a companion in your life, I think that the hope is that the next one would be better.
Yeah. It doesn't have to follow you that you were divorced and so you're just done.
It's not part of your identity. It's something that happened.
The Bible verse for this season is Psalm 46, 1-5. Is our refuge and strength, an ever-present help in trouble. Therefore we will not fear, though the earth give way and the mountains fall into the heart of the sea, where its waters roar and foam and the mountains wave with the surging. There is a river whose streams make glad the city of God, the holy place where the Most High dwell. God is within her. She will not fall. God will help her of the day. Lord Jesus, I pray for everyone who is going through something hard, whether it is separation, and divorce, and addiction, grief, even feeling like they're alone in their lives, God. I pray that there will be an ever-present comfort that you bring into their hearts. There will be a hope that is restored and renewed. And they will know that you are our strength. You are a God who's sovereign above all things, and a God who loves his children well. And I pray that they will know that within the depths of their heart. Would you help them in their struggle? Would you help them every day? May they know that you are holding their hands, helping them into the next day, into the next hour, into the next meeting. I thank you for being an ever-present presence in our hearts. We love you. In Jesus' name.
As we wrap up today's episode, we are grateful you join us to explore what it means to remain connected to God, to yourself, and to others. To stay updated on future episodes, be sure to hit that subscribe button and connect with us on Instagram and Facebook at Remain Connected. Counseling appointments can be made at RemainConnectedLLC.com. Your support means the world to us. Until next time, may you find peace in your connections and blessings in every step of your journey. Have